Shri Hare Namaha. We shall begin today's session now. Om Shri Guru Bhyo Namaha, Om Paramaguru Bhyo Namaha, Om Adi Guru Bhyo Namaha, Om Mula Guru Bhyo Namaha, Om Shri Ananda Tirtha Bhagavad Padacharya Bhyo Namaha, Om Veda Vyasaya Namaha, Om Bharatyai Namaha, Om Saraswatyai Namaha, Om Vayave Namaha, Om Brahmane Namaha, Om Mahalakshmi Namaha, Om Narayanaya Namaha, Moksha Pradashri Vasudevaya Namaha, Krishnaya Vasudevaya Hare Paramatmane Pranatakleshanashaya Govindaya Namo Namaha. Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare. अविकाराय शुद्धाय नित्याय परमात्मने सदैक रूप रूपाय विष्णवे सर्वजिष्णवे नमो हिरण्यगर्भाय हरे शंकराय च वासुदेवाय ताराय सर्वस्थित्यंत कारणे एकानेक स्वरूपाय स्थूल सूक्ष्मात्मने नमः व्यक्त व्यक्त रूपाय विष्णवे मुक्ति हेतवे. So any questions so far from the previous sessions?
No, brother.
Okay, then we'll move on with today's topic.
Yes, brother.
So we shall be discussing about the different philosophies today and how they progressed and how Madhva Siddhanta was propagated in the process. So initially, during the 6th to the 7th centuries, there was actually a rise of Buddhism, especially in most parts of northern India. Then came the philosophy of Sri Adi Shankaracharya, which is popularly called as Kevala Advaita or the Smartha philosophy. And he wrote a commentary on the Brahma Sutras, the Bhagavad Gita, and the 10 well-known Upanishads today. So from then onwards, the popularity of Smartha philosophy increased, and the other darshanas, which had been quite popular since till then, slightly had a reduced popularity. And later on, Sri Ramanujacharya came, and along with the influence of his guru's guru, that is Sri Yamunacharya, he revived the popularity of Vaishnava Dharma, that is Pancharatra, once again. Then moving on, after 2 more centuries, Sri Madhvacharya came, and he also authored multiple commentaries on the different shastras, and because of that, the philosophy of Tattvavaada once again became popular. And before him, there were actually 21 different philosophers who were Vedantins and who had commented on the Brahma Sutras and Bhagavad Gita, but none of their works survive actually today, except few major ones like Bhaskaracharya, Shankaracharya, Ramanujacharya, and few others. None of the other 21 philosophers are having much of any popularity today, and nor is their philosophy well known. So Sri Madhvacharya primarily refuted other darshanas in his major works like his Brahma Sutra Bhashya and works like Anuvyakyana, which is also a commentary on the Brahma Sutras, and along with his Upanishad commentaries, and also the works like Mahabharata Tatparya and the Bhagavata Tatparya Nirnaya, which are commentaries on the Mahabharata and Bhagavata Purana. So the Mahabharata Tatparya is a summary of the entire Mahabharata and similar shastras and whatever they have mentioned in relation to the events of the Mahabharata. And after Madhvacharya, the next most prominent guru was Sri Jayatirtha, who is also known as Tikacharya, because he had authored multiple commentaries on the commentaries of Sri Madhvacharya. So he is known for his best work, that is Nyaya Sudha, which is actually a commentary on Anuvyakyana. So Anuvyakyana and the Brahma Sutra Bhashya are both commentaries on the Brahma Sutras, except that the Brahma Sutra Bhashya explains the straightforward meaning of the Brahma Sutras, and Anuvyakyana is more focused on refuting other darshanas and providing the interpretation of the Brahma Sutras from the point of view of Tattvavaada. So then on, Sri Jayatirtha has also commented upon multiple other works, including Srimad Acharya's Bhagavad Gita Bhashya and Tatparya, and also the multiple other works dealing with philosophy such as Tattva Sankhya. So, because of the influence of the initial gurus after Sri Madhvacharya, the philosophy of Tattvavaada actually started gaining popularity. And after Sri Jayatirtha, the other well-known philosophers other than him during his times were his guru, that is Akshobhya Tirtha, who is also known for actually winning a debate against Sri Vidyaranya on the topic of the interpretation of the Upanishad statement Tattvam Asi, which literally means you are that. So Tattvamasi is actually referring to Paramatma being one's Antaryami, and in that context, it is stated that in that the Tvam here actually refers to the Paramatma, who is said to be the self of ourself. So in that manner, he is said to be Tvam. But the Advaitis have interpreted this as the fact that truly what we can call as Atma or the self itself is Paramatma, and that there is no individual identity of our own. So Sri Vedanta Deshika, the Sri Vaishnava philosopher, was actually the mediator for this debate, and he was the one who finally declared Sri Akshobhya Tirtha as the winner. Though the fact was that Vidyaranya was actually his childhood friend. And further, after Sri Jayatirtha, the next prominent guru who was responsible for bringing a lot of popularity to Madhva Siddhanta was Sri Vyasa Tirtha, also known as Sri Vyasarajaru. So he is the main pontiff of the Vyasaraja Mata, which has now descended from his Guru Parampara, and he was responsible for writing a grantha called Nyayamrita. So, for those who don't know, this is a detailed refutation of the Siddhanta of Mayavada. And this elaborately refutes Mayavada, and this actually led to a series of multiple other works and counter refutations by both Smartas and Madhvas in the process. So, since then on, there was a huge there was actually a huge series of debates and series of granthas and counter refutations which were written, and in the end, the prominent ones were Sri Madhusudana Saraswati's Advaita Siddhi. So this was again an attempt to establish Advaita and refute Nyayamrita, but this was answered again by Sri Hulagi Srinathacharya by his work called Dvaita Dyumani. So after this, there were no more such works in this series, and his was the last response in the whole series of the granthas written by both Smartas and Madhvas. So Sri Vyasatirtha is also known to have written multiple other works, including Tatparya Chandrika, which is also a very important grantha among Madhvas. And this Tatparya Chandrika is actually an explanation of the Brahma Sutra Bhashya of Sri Madhvacharya in relation to how other philosophies interpret those sutras and to refute the tenets of those philosophies. So the prime Purva Pakshas here are the Smartas and the Sri Vaishnavas. So on certain matters, on many matters actually, their opinions have been presented first, and then there are refutations, and then there are also possible objections which could have been raised by them, and those have also been refuted. So Tatparya Chandrika is actually it can be considered as a sub-commentary to another work of Sri Jayatirtha known as Tattva Prakashika, because Tattva Prakashika is also a commentary on the Brahma Sutra Bhashya of Sri Madhvacharya written by Sri Jayatirtha. Though the best of arguments of Sri Jayatirtha can be found more so in Nyaya Sudha rather than Tattva Prakashika itself. So, any questions still here?
No, brother.
Sorry, somebody was asking, please proceed. Uh, Thank you. Prasad, I was just asking that I think two acharyas by the name of Vyasatirtha because I think Vyasatirtha is different and Vyasarajatirtha is different. I've heard these two names in different contexts.
No, no, that is not the case actually. There was no one called Vyasa Raja Tirtha separately. It is Sri Vyasa Tirtha only who is known as Sri Vyasa Rajaru. So Vyasa Raja was a title given to him.
Bhrata, in just a follow question, in a series named Kimpasu Purva Dehe, Sri Jayatirtha also had a Krishna named Sri Vyasatirtha. So is this Vyasatirtha the same as the one who wrote Tattvavaada Chandrika?
Could you repeat? I didn't get it properly. I was not able to hear as your voice was breaking up.
I'm just saying that in a series named Kimpasu Purva Dehe, actually it's an animation film on Sri Jayatirtha. Sri Jayatirtha is also shown to have a Shishya named Sri Vyasatirtha. So is this Vyasatirtha the same as the one who wrote Tattvavaada Chandrika and Nyayamrita?
No, no. Jayatirtharu's time was actually almost a century before Vyasatirtharu appeared. So it's that is not the case. And where exactly did you see this mention of Jayatirtha's disciple being called Vyasatirtha?
In the actually it's an animation film on YouTube. It's called Kimpasu Purva Dehe.
Okay, so there is actually no such thing with there is no such thing. So actually, Vyasatirtharu's time period was totally much later. Actually, almost with a gap of a century. So Sri Jayatirtha lived in the 13th century and towards the 14th century, as per certain sources. But Vyasatirtharu appeared in the 15th century. So he was not his disciple.
Okay, okay, understood, Bhata. Thank you for clarification. Hare Srinivasa.
Harish Srinivasa. Any more queries?
Yes, I just wanted to know whether the Dasa Parampara started during Vyasatirtha's time.
Yes, we were going to discuss that after this. So the parampara of the Haridasas started basically from the prominent ones like Sri Kanakadasa and Sri Purandaradasa and Sri Vijayadasa. So Sri Kanakadasa and Purandaradasa lived during the times of Sri Vyasatirtha only. So that is when that actually started.
Okay, Pragna. Thank you.
Pradnya, so Vyasatirtha was a previous incarnation of Raghavendra Swami, right?
Yes, he is actually an avatar of Shankukarna,
Okay,
who also appeared as Prahlada.
okay, thank you.
Any more queries? Shankukarna is actually the devata from Brahmaloka whose avatara is Prahlada and all his other avatars. So he is the actual devata who exists in Brahmaloka and is one of the major devatas.
Pragna, I have a question which is not relevant to the topic that you're discussing. Shall I ask now or
Sure, sure.
later?
You can ask now.
Okay. So the Jivatmas who think that Shiva is supreme and they become his followers, for example, Banasura and Virochana, we hear, I mean, we read about them in the Puranas. So what happens to those Jivatmas? Do they come back to samsara, or what happens to them?
So again, as stated previously, that totally depends on their swabhava. So that depends on whether they're satvika, rajasika, or tamasika, because the main factor which determines is their nature and how they like to behave in any given situation. So if they are those who like to be open-minded and who actually sincerely like spirituality, sooner or later they'll become Vaishnavas and they'll obtain moksha also. So that is stated even in the Varaha Purana that for around 1,000 years, if one is a bhakta of Shiva, then that person will sooner become a bhakta of Ganapati, and later on he or she will become a Vaishnava. So that will take place naturally, because as one does sadhana, a sattvic person will naturally come to obtain the proper jnana. So there is no question of a sattvika being misled or being or remaining in samsara for too long. And especially for the manushas, the period of sadhana is actually shorter than the devatas or other beings. So for them, they will obviously, in their case, they'll be guided sooner or later, and they'll come to the correct path. But for those who are asuras and those who worship Shiva mainly because they don't like Vishnu and they know that Shiva is pleased easily, as said by Guruji also in the previous sessions, this is a form of asadupasana, because here too they don't have any bhakti for Shiva truly, nor do they actually like benefiting other people, but their agenda is to spread hatred, and their agenda is to cause trouble and to spread sorrow and suffering among others. And their what they gain happiness from is by inflicting sorrow upon others. So that is what they enjoy, and sooner or later they'll end up in Andhantamas.
So we can assume, or we can extrapolate the same theory to all the jivatmas. Like we normally hear about Shiva's devotees being different types, no, pishachas, and they are given different nomenclature. So we can assume that they are in that form for that lifespan only, but they may or may not become bhaktas later.
Yes, that depends on their swabhava again, because they are also of different categories of jivas. So again, some of the Shiva Ganas or the Pishachis who accompany Shiva are also again tamasika beings, and they are also not performing satupasana. So they also they do not exhibit proper sattva guna, and they end up going to naraka only, just like other asuras, because their swabhava is also asuric.
Okay. And what about the Jivatmas who worship Devi? Like we hear about the Shaktas, no? I mean, we have a very strong Shakta tradition in our country. So what happens to such Jivatmas? Mm,
Again, the same thing is applicable to them also.
okay. Thank you.
Pradnya, one question. So you mentioned a different sadhana periods for other, like every jiva. So can you explain like what's the difference between the sadhana period for manushas or other uh, categories of jiva?
So the total amount of duration, the total duration required for a jivatma to achieve the destiny it deserves is it varies depending upon the swabhava of the jiva. So for the devatas, it is actually long, and it's the longest for the Ruju devatas. So if you see right now, there are about 100 Rujus right now in every time in Samsara, there are 100 Rujus in the Brahmanda. So those Ruju jivas, they will, among them, one will, the last one in that category who was not in Samsara during the lifespan of the previous Brahma would have come now, and for the lifespan of 100 more brahmas he will be continuing his sadhana, and he'll though he would have attained aparoksha jnana, but he wouldn't have completed the sadhana required to achieve moksha. And so in the process of that, his full qualities wouldn't have manifested completely, and in the process of that, it will take some more time, and finally, after 100 such births, he will finally become Vayu, and after one more such janma, which will extend for an unimaginable span of time from our point of view. At that time, he will become Brahma, and then he will attain moksha. So for the subsequent devatas like Shiva and others, it is actually lesser. So then for the other devatas like Indra, they are replaced in every manvantara itself. So the tenure of a Manu is one manvantara, as we discussed previously, and at the end of that is half a day of Brahma, not even a month or an year of Brahmadeva, because in 1 year there are 360 days in the scale of human beings, devatas, rishis, and Brahmadeva also. But the duration of the different time periods will vary in their lokas. So this is something what physicists call as time dilation, which has been there in the Shastras since ancient times, almost thousands of years before these people discovered it. But anyway, so the fact is that the devatas who are below them will remain in those positions for a much shorter time, and the Gandharvas and others will have a shorter lifespan, and we human beings have a much shorter lifespan. And this is also because the time required for completing our sadhana is also quite less. So the advantage is that we will quickly obtain paripakva bhakti faster. If among us those who are sattvic will attain that faster, and they will also get to achieve the maximum ananda and aparoksha jnana to the very best that they can. So that will not take much actually compared to the compared to the duration taken by the devatas. But the disadvantage is that this is what constitutes the taratamya in once a person attains moksha. So this is why the Manushya Jivas are the lowest in the Taratamya among the Satvika Jivas, and compared to the Devatas, we will experience a much lesser amount of Ananda. So once the Manushyas reach Vaikuntha, this is what will happen. And the Devatas, the Gandharvas and others will have slightly higher amounts of Ananda, and subsequently the Devatas will have much higher, and Shiva and the others will have much higher Ananda, and then finally Brahma and Vayu, Brahma, that is as Brahma only, Vayu can also attain moksha. So the Ruju Jivas will have the maximum amount of Ananda. So this is how the gradation is there, and this is why the time period required for completing one sadhana also varies. Does that make it clear?
Yeah. So for Manusha Jivas, the sadhana period is one Brahmakalpa. Can we assume that?
It is approximately said to be that much.
Okay. And what about the Tamo Jivas, like all the Rakshasas, Kali and all? Do they also do sadhanas just like the Devatas, or they have shorter as well, like Manushyas?
They don't have a long duration for their sadhanas, but again, among them, the people who are meant to deserve the worst kind of sorrow in Andantamas will cause more trouble in samsara, and they'll be there here for a slightly longer period of time. So the worst of them is Kali Purusha. So, but again, his sadhana is also very short only. It's just for one Kali Yuga, that is approximately 4,32,000 years. So after that, he will attain Andantamas, and again he will reach there, and he will attain the maximum amount of sorrow, which is given to the person in the lowest position there.
Okay. Thank you.
Any more queries?
Hare Rama Brother.
Hare Rama.
Regarding, could you please go ahead, Rajesh?
Yeah, thank you. So, brother, those Shiv devotees and Shiv Gana, are they tamasic?
Are they what?
Are they tamasic souls?
See, again, that depends on their swabhava. We cannot say that based on what they do right now at this time. And again, that's why, as I said already, the jivas in samsara are of diverse categories. So broadly, they're classified as satvika, rajasika, and tamasika. Among them, there are again subdivisions, and among these people, the ones who are Shiva Ganas and the Pishachis and all of them, they can be of various categories again. Some can be satvika, some can be rajasika, some can be tamasika. But as said in the Bhagavata Purana's 10th skanda, towards the end also, I think if I remember correctly, it's the 86th or 85th adhyaya, where there is a mention as to why Shiva blesses his bhaktas easily with a lot of material wealth and everything which a person in samsara might want. So the main reason is that because Shiva is again he is also a devata in samsara, and he responds to the emotions which his bhaktas exhibit. So that is why he is also pleased quite easily, and he doesn't care if his bhaktas are not sattvic people. So that is why the different Shiva ganas and other entities are of mixed categories, and not all of them can be sattvika, not all of them can be rajasika, not all of them can be tamasika. But again, among them there are some who show a lot of bhakti, but they're again not true bhaktas because they are tamasikas, like Ravana, then asuras like Manimanta. So there are many such categories of asuras, and Banasura again. So again, they are not necessarily they don't have to be sattvic people or tamasic people. Just as how any human being in our world here right now, we cannot say with certainty that they're sattvika, rajasika, or tamasika till we see them for long enough and through all sorts of situations where we can still guess that they most likely belong to this category. But again, it's not possible to guarantee it. So does that make it clear?
Yeah, brother. Thank you. Hare Rama.
Yes, about Vritrasura, as far as I'm aware, he was a Satvika Jiva born in an Asura Kula. But again, I haven't confirmed this, so cannot comment upon it, as I haven't verified this among the Vidwans and others.
Hare Rama Brother. I
Hare
have
Rama.
one question regarding the shloka you just mentioned. You said that the after 1,000 births of Shiva Bhakta, they'll be born as Ganapati's Bhakta, and after that they'll be born as Vaishnava.
They
But
won't be born like that, they will become that. It doesn't talk about them being born like that, because no one is any bhakta of a particular devata by birth unless that person is an aparoksha jnani.
okay, understood. But actually, the doubt is that Ganapati falls much lower in hierarchy than Shiva. So why does it have to go like that? After Shiva Bhakta, then it goes to Ganapati Bhakta, then it goes to Vishnu Bhakta. It violates hierarchy, no?
So this is not particularly based on any hierarchy as such, or that um, this is not based on the devata taratamya specifically. So this is just how one sadhana progresses, because it depends on the type of upasana they perform. So that doesn't actually have any relation to the proper taratamya here. It is just how one progresses in their sadhana, and usually, typically, in certain cases, this is how it goes. That's all.
Okay, understood, brother. Thank you for clarification. Hare Ram.
Hare Rama.
I had a question, Bata. I wanted to ask what happens to the Mayavadis who practice the Advaita Siddhanta? Does Bhagwan fulfill their desire of merging with him?
See, so as I said already, the same explanation is applicable to people who follow any other darshana. It's not just Shaiva or Shakta or any such thing. So whatever I said is applicable there also. And again, there is a form of moksha called Sayujya moksha, but again, one without being an Aparoksha Jnani, one cannot attain moksha. So simply by following the Advaita philosophy, from our point of view, they will not attain moksha just like that. They'll have to learn the Siddhanta of Tattvavaada only, or at least if they're enlightened properly by the devatas or rishis or someone else in some higher lokas, if they go there, then again, if they're satvika, they will receive aparoksha jnana and they can complete their sadhana, and they will attain the proper jnana and they can do that. But again, and the type of moksha which one gets will again vary as per the swabhava of the jiva. It depends totally on the jiva, what it desires or what it has a liking for. So depending upon that, different kind of jivas will obtain different kinds of moksha, and that is not something which has anything to do with this, because without having aparoksha jnana, one cannot attain any form of moksha.
Then what about Sayuja moksha? Is that considered as moksha or it's a temporary state?
It's not anything temporary, it's one of the types of moksha only.
Okay, where you become one with Bhagwan, right?
No, they don't become one with Bhagwan. They share Bhagwan's body and forget about their individual existence. Just because they forget about it doesn't mean that they don't have an individual existence. It's similar to how we call it the so-called Advaita realization. But again, many people claim that this supports the tenets of Smarta philosophy, but that is not the case here, because actually this confirms that the Mayavada philosophy and the so-called realization are actually miles apart. Because here they do not actually lose their individual existence itself. It's just that they forget it when they become immersed in thinking about Bhagwan completely. So same is the case with Sayujya moksha also.
So one can remain in that state, right?
Yes, definitely.
Okay, thank you.
The only difference is that the Ruju Jivas usually, by default, they undergo Sayujya moksha itself, and they have a special type of Sayujya moksha for the Ruju Jivas, where they share Bhagwan's body, and they also have they don't unlike the other jivas, they have another special type of ananda also, which they experience much higher than the other types of jivas.
Okay.
Brother, Sayuja Moksha
Means again, sharing Bhagwan's body, or they feel as if they are part of Bhagwan himself. They basically remain with Bhagwan, and they forget about their own individual existence. So they are immersed only in thinking about him and seeing or almost feeling what is happening to him, and they forget about their individual existence.
So Advaitis get this type of moksha.
What exactly?
This moksha which you just said, those Mayavadis get this type of moksha.
No, no. As per us, no one can get moksha by following the Mayavada philosophy or any other philosophy, because to attain moksha, you need aparoksha jnana. So moksha again comes as a byproduct of that. Those who may have a liking for such a type of moksha will get that. And also the Ruju Jivas will by default get Sayuja moksha. And they have a special type of ananda also, which they obtain through that.
Okay, brother, got it. Thank you.
Pradnya, so what are the other types of moksha? One is Sayujya.
So the other types of moksha are basically one is Salokya, that is residence in Bhagwan's abode itself, but there they will live like how you could say how people live here, except that they will have only Ananda, and there they will be performing all sorts of activities, but all of it will be a sadhana for Bhagwan. So because of that, they will be able to they'll be able to still perform other activities with the remembrance of Bhagwan, and they'll be free from the tapas, as we call them, the tapatraya: adhyatmika, adidaivika, adibhautika. So since they're completely free from all defects of samsara, they are free from that, and there they are fully free from all sorts of troubles and sufferings, and they have a clear knowledge. So the next one is samipya, that is being close to Bhagwan. So they're like similar to the relationship between Bhagwan and his child. They will get to remain with him all the time, and and that is how they will perform their sadhana. And sarupya is where the person gets the form similar to Bhagwan. So again, they won't obtain certain features, especially they won't completely look exactly like Bhagwan. They will look very similar, because obviously certain features of Bhagwan cannot be portrayed by other jivas, and that is what differentiates him from them. So these are the other kinds of moksha. And again, sayujya is sharing Bhagwan's body. Does that make it clear?
Yes, thank you.
Which is best among these types of moksha?
Again, as I said, there is no best among these as such. There is no hierarchy or anything. Uh, there is no hierarchy as such, and again, it depends on what the jiva wants. So if the jiva likes, say, sayujya moksha or samipya moksha, it will get that only.
Okay, brother.
Oh, Bhata, Hare Rama.
Hare Ram.
Bhata, I just have one question regarding Mata Mahalakshmi. In which category of moksha does she fall? I know that she is Nitya Mukta, but does she fall within any of these four categories of moksha?
No, she is totally different from the jivatmas. She is not a jivatma, so but again, she is not paramatma, and she is Bhagwan's wife. So she will. She also has the power to grant moksha also. So because of that, again, she is not like a mukta jiva. So she is considered as a separate category in the Taratamya itself. So because there are again three categories. One is Paramatma, Prakriti, and the Jivas. In the Bhagavad Gita also it is said Dvavimau Purushau Loke Sharakshara. So Shara are, or the perishable entities, are the Jivatmas. Now it doesn't mean that the Jivatma itself is temporary, but because of the sufferings it goes through, and how the Jivatmas have a temporary residence during one life in samsara, so they're said to be Shara. And the next category is Akshara, that is imperishable, that is Lakshmi Devi. But the beyond both of these, and discrete from them, and superior to both of them, is Paramatma. So that is Vishnu.
Okay, okay, Bhata. So, Bhata, so Riju Devata is also worshipped Devi Lakshmi. No?
I didn't hear that clearly.
Like the Riju Devatas, 100 Riju Devatas also worship Devi Lakshmi.
I didn't hear the last part. The Devatas, and what do they do?
They also worship the Devi Lakshmi just as they do for Bhagwan Vishnu.
Yes, definitely. All Satvikas at least have to do that.
Okay, Bhata, okay. Thanks.
Any more queries? So we shall move on now. So after the time of Sri Vyasatirtha, there was still a need to popularize the Siddhanta of Tattvavaada. So during that time, there were two more prominent gurus, that is Sri Vadiraja Tirtharu and Sri Raghavendra Swami. So Sri Raghavendra Swami is quite famous all over India and many might know him already. So Sri Vyasa Tirtharu is actually another Ruju Devata. So he is the upcoming Vayu actually. He is the next Ruju Devata who will be taking over the position of Vayu in the during the next cycle of Srishti, Sthiti and Laya. So he actually appeared in the family of two Brahmins in Tulunadu, and when they were childless and due to the blessings of Madhva Gurus, he appeared and he also took up sannyasa in his childhood itself. And he later on went on to write a lot of books, and his especially his poetic skills were unmatched by almost all of the scholars during his times. And he was also somewhat like the subsequent guru of Sri Kanakadasa after the passing of Sri Vyasatirtharu. So, and he lived up to almost 120 years, and he also performed a lot of miracles during his lifetime. But more than that, he contributed greatly to propagating and preaching spirituality and making a lot of materialistic people into Vishnu Bhaktas, including many kings, and even he also resurrected the deceased son of a sultan in Delhi. So he wrote a lot of books, but the major ones which are popular especially are the ones like Sri Rukminesha Vijaya. So this was actually a grantha written on the avatara of Sri Krishna and Bhagwan's deeds during his avatara as Krishna. And this was actually a response to a challenge given by a king that none of the scholars he knew had been able to match the poetic skills of a certain Smartha Pandita who was in his court. So within a few days' time itself, Sri Vadiraja Tirtharu composed this work, and he also he became known for his achievement due to this. And he has also composed a lot of stutis, which are sung even today by Madhvas in most of the temples. And before him, actually, pretty much during the same time, there was another successor of Sri Vyasa Tirtha known as Sri Vijayendra Tirtha. So Sri Vijayendra Tirtha was the main opponent of a Shaiva philosopher called Appaya Dikshita. So when Appaya Dikshita had written a book called Madhva Tantra Mukha Mardana, that is killing the face of the Madhva philosophy. So he was originally a Smartha, but he later turned into a Shaiva, and he started supporting the philosophy of Shaiva Dharma, and he was into debating with many of the scholars from other sampradayas, and Vijayendra Tirtharu was one of his prime opponents who refuted most of his works and also won against him in a few debates. And during that time, after his first work, Madhva Tantra Mukha Mardana, Sri Vijayendra Tirtharu responded to it with a book called Appaya Kapola Chapetika, which means a tight slap on the face of Appaya. So subsequently, according to certain Madhva sources, this is not something written in the neutral sources, so cannot be stated as an argument or as an absolutely proven thing. But it has been stated by Appaya Dikshita himself that he lost faith in his philosophy finally and started learning more about Siddhanta from Sri Vijayendra Tirtharu. So and later on, he also admitted his defeat and that Narayana is Parabrahman in one of his last works. So subsequently, Vijayendra Tirtharu's disciple was the guru of Raghavendra Swami. And Raghavendra Swami also was one of the most recent gurus, and he was known to be an Aparokshajnani and also someone who actually came at the time when again Madhva Siddhanta was losing its popularity, and he popularized it once again. And he also wrote a lot of books, and the main granthas which are the most important are his commentaries on the Bhagavad Gita, so also known as the Gita Vivrutti. So here he summarizes most of the important uh, uh, the tatparya of almost all the shlokas of the Bhagavad Gita and explains them properly in accordance to the bhashyas of all the Purvacharyas, including Sri Madhvacharya, Sri Jayatirtha, and Sri Vyasatirtha. So along with this, he has also written almost more than hundreds of books actually. And unfortunately, a small fraction of these survive today. And almost all others are either lost or they may be unknown where exactly they are, or their manuscripts may be abandoned somewhere in certain Madhva matas or elsewhere, about to be lost soon. So these have been the most prominent of the gurus of the Madhva Sampradaya. And another tradition among the Madhvas is the set of those people known as the Haridasas. And the fact is that not much is actually known about the Haridasas right now, since there aren't many proper written sources about them, except those written during those times. Only a few were written actually, and most of the information about them comes from the mentions of different Haridasas in the works of each other. So because of that alone, we know most of the information which we have about them. And we shall discuss about the Haridasas. We shall discuss more about the Haridasas tomorrow in the session. Yes, any queries?
Subrata Apaya Dikshita. He was first a Shiv, then he turned into Vaishnav.
Not really. There is no mention of him becoming a Vaishnava as such, but he admitted that Narayana is Parabrahman and that the conclusion of Vaishnava Siddhanta is correct. But he didn't exactly take up Vaishnava Diksha or start following that philosophy as such.
Okay, Bhata.
Any more
So
queries?
what's the difference? Yeah, one. So what's the difference between Smarta and Shaiva? Like,
Smartas are the followers of Shankaracharya's philosophy or Kevala Advaita, and they believe that Parabrahman is Nirguna and he has no form, no shape, nothing, and that the Panchadevatas are the forms of Parabrahman. That is Vishnu, Shiva, Surya, Devi, and Ganapati. So they believe that they are all Sakshat avatars of Parabrahman, but Parabrahman is Nirguna, and that they also believe in Kevala Advaita, that the very Atma itself is Paramatma, and there is only one Atma, and there is no the whole idea of people having a separate identity of their own is all an illusion, and it is caused by avidya. So their ultimate goal is that, as per them, is that to forget all this and to realize that there is no individual existence of our own at all. Shaiva philosophy is again just like Pancharatra and Vaikanasa. It is the philosophy which believes that that Shiva alone is Parabrahman, and that attaining his loka is the best, and that is the ultimate goal. And that they also are somewhat oriented to Advaita like philosophies, but they're not exactly, they do not agree with Shankaracharya's philosophy. So again, they also differ, and they do not literally believe that only Bhagwan exists and there is no individuality of our own, and that we ourselves are Bhagwan. So that is not what Shaiva philosophies believe, most of them actually. And again, the Shaiva philosophies are rooted in the Shaiva Agamas, or it is known as Pashupata, because it was propagated by Pashupati, that is Shiva.
okay, thank you.
Any more queries?
Hare Ram Brother.
Hare Rama.
Brother, just one question that all these acharyas like Sri Vijayendra Tirtha and all the Purvacharyas, were they aparuksha jnani?
Yes, definitely. All of them, they became very popular to this extent, mainly because they were aparukshajnanis only. See, and more than that, some people keep mentioning that they are avatars of so and so devatas, but that is not that important. What matters is that all of them were clearly aparukshajnanis and they had perfect knowledge. And Vijayendra Tirtha even had the darshan of Bhagwan himself and Vyasadeva and Sri Madhvacharya multiple times. So even before his debates with people like a scholar called Lingarajendra, which is actually a very elaborately documented debate, where there is also one instance where actually Lingarajendra gives a lot of arguments, and they're actually quite recurring arguments among the Shaivas, and these have been compiled in a book called Nyaya Muktiko Mala, and this section is called Shaiva Sarvasva Khandanam. So this was actually one of the very first books published by us on our website back in 2023 when we initially started our project. So not just them also, but many others, including Sri Purandaradasa, Sri Kanakadasa, all of them clearly were aparuksha jnanis.
Yes, Brother. Actually, Sri Vijayendra Tirtha also wrote one grantha in which he refuted the idea that Vaikuntha exists outside Brahmanda. He concluded that Vaikuntha exists inside Brahmanda only. So, I just had a question regarding the positioning of Bhutakasha, Avyakritakasha. Couldn't map these. Could you please help?
Okay, so this is something which I myself haven't confirmed with absolute certainty, so cannot guarantee a proper answer on this. But that was in the context of a debate with a Sri Vaishnava, which he had, and more so, again, the definition of Brahmanda in most of the Madhva Granthas is actually very ambiguous. So, as said by Sri Bananja Govindacharya and other scholars, the very definition of that is a bit ambiguous as to what it means, whether it means this whole universe as we understand it now as per modern physics, or whether it refers to a particular solar system or something, because again the description varies in certain contexts, but one understanding is that the Brahmanda is infinite, and in that there are multiple subdivisions, that is the solar systems which exists and which have a certain set of devatas, but common to all of them are the other devatas like Brahma and others, and beyond the Brahmanda is Vaikunta. So again, but whether the position of Vaikunta in this context actually depends on the definition of Brahmanda here.
Okay, Bhata, okay, understood. Uh, just one question. The Brahma Loka is also Vaikuntha only, no? I think Satya Loka is not same as Brahma Loka.
Your voice is breaking a bit. If possible, please type your query.
Oh, Bhata, is it clear now?
Somewhat. There was a lot of noise and disturbance.
Okay, sorry. I was just asking that Brahma Loka is different from Satya Loka, I think, no? Is it the same? Because in other Sampradaya, it is the same thing.
Brahmaloka can refer to either Satyaloka, that is the Loka of Brahmadeva, but or else it can refer to the Loka of Brahman, that is Vaikunta or Paramapadam. So that depends on the context again. Because if you see the Bhagavad Gita, there is a shloka in the 16th Adhyaya which states that up to Brahmaloka, there is again birth and death. And but after reaching my abode, there is no more birth and death. This is what Sri Krishna says. But if you see the Chandogya Upanishad, there it is said that upon attaining Brahmaloka, in the very last mantra, it is said in the 8th Prapataka, 15th Kanda, there it is in the 15th Kanda. It is said that upon attaining Brahmaloka, one does not return at all, because there in that context, the word Brahmaloka refers to the Loka of Brahman. It doesn't refer to the Loka of Brahmadeva or Chaturmukha.
Okay, Bhata, understood. Thank you.
Any further questions?
Brother, what was the difference between Tirtharu and Dasaru?
Between who?
Tirtharu and Dasaru.
Tirtha is a title which is given to sannyasis. But the Haridasas, they were actually, they were Panditas and they were Acharyas, but they were not sannyasis. And nor were they Diksha Gurus as such. They were, and many of them, most of them belong to multiple different Varnas. Some of them were Brahmanas, and some of them, like Kanakadasa himself, was a Shudra actually. And many disciples of Sri Tande Muddu Mohana Dasaru were actually from, many of them were from the lower castes and so-called untouchables and Chandalas. They were all converted to Vaishnavas and Madhvas by Tande Muddu Mohana Dasaru. But the title Tirtha is given only to sannyasis, and as said in the Dharma Shastras, only Brahmanas are eligible to become sannyasis. So those who are not, everyone who is an Acharya or a Guru gets the title Tirtha, because the title Tirtha is given only to sannyasis. Even many Smartas also follow the same rule.
Okay, brother. What was the name of the Dasaru you just mentioned?
Who the, you mean Tande Muddu Mohana Dasaru?
Yes, brother. Who is he?
Yeah, he was one of the Haridasas who was from one of the recent centuries. And he is unfortunately not that popular. So he lived sometime during the 18th or the 17th century, and there were similarly two other members of that parampara, including women like Sri Giriyamma and many others. They also contributed to this, but again, they are not that popular now. So they were some of the recent members of this Haridasa parampara.
Okay, brother. Thank you.
So we shall discuss more about them tomorrow. So any further doubts about today's session? Okay, so basically the Buddhas or the Buddhists believe that the very cause of all causes, or as we define it, Om Janmadhyasya Yataha Om, that is Paramatma, is Shunya. In other words, there is no specific entity called Paramatma or Brahman, but rather everything comes from nothingness. So there are actually there are elaborate criticisms of Bauddha Dharma in other granthas. Here and all, Srimad Acharya hasn't elaborately explained much about that, because that was not very popular during his times. Anyway, because of people like Kumarila Bhatta and then Shankaracharya and others, Ramanujacharya, the Buddhism lost most of its popularity. So by the time, almost all had become either Nyayikas, Mimamsakas, or Vedantins. So that's why he does not give much of an elaborate explanation here. So what here Srimad Acharya meant as that it cannot serve as the adhisthana for the world is because logically it doesn't make sense that everything comes from nothing. Because as this analogy was given by a friend of mine to criticize Buddhism, that if at all everything came from nothing, then there would be no uniformity or a particular mechanism as to how things operate here. And for example, even a rabbit would have had horns, but that is not the case. And rabbits, they are a certain species who have a certain type of genetics appearance, and similarly different species of animals, plants, and other organisms. And similarly, there are different types of substances in the universe and different types of entities. So if at all everything came from nothing, it wouldn't logically make sense that everything is first of all organized in this manner, and there is a certain protocol and order here. So that is what this argument basically means. Does that make it clear?
Yes, brother.
Okay, and still Haridasa Parampara is going on? No, not really. Right now, that there are no more people in that Haridasa Parampara right now. Since the around 2-3 centuries back, there have been no more such people who have had such a position or prominence. Any more queries? Okay, if there are no more queries, we'll end here for now. Om Achyutaya Namaha, Om Anantaya Namaha, Om Govindaya Namaha. Shri Krishna Arpanamastu. Om Achyutaya Namaha, Om Anantaya Namaha, Om Govindaya Namaha, Om Achyutananta Govindebhyo Namo Namaha.
Hare Rama,
Hare Ram,
brother.
brother.
Hare